Hey, what's up you guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about if you should buy a home when interest rates are at an all-time low. If you're new to my channel, my name is Min. I like to talk about personal finance and how to save money. Let's get into the video. Now before we begin this video, I want to mention that I am not your real estate agent and I'm also not your financial advisor. So make sure you guys do your own due diligence, and this is just my opinion, so take it for what it's worth. So if you haven't heard by now, interest rates are at an all-time low. That is because the Fed has lowered the interest rate to stimulate the economy in light of the crisis. So you can easily borrow money to buy a car or buy a house. As of July 2020, you can get a 30-year fixed rate mortgage for under 3%. That is ridiculous. But does that mean that you should buy a home during this time when interest rates are at an all-time low? Well, consider these three things first. The first thing to consider is with interest rates at an all-time low, that means that you're going to have a lot more competition when buying your house. And that is because all of a sudden, way more people are now qualified to buy a home. Let's say someone wanted to buy a $300,000 home at 4% interest rate. The monthly payment on that would be $1,432. Now let's say the rates change to 3%. All of a sudden the monthly payment is now $1,264 for that same $300,000 mortgage. That's $168 less per month that this person has to come up with. Now imagine a $600,000 or $700,000 home. Well, you get the point. The monthly payment is going to be significantly lower, and so that means that that couple can now afford the home. They're in the market to buy a home now. They're now a potential buyer in this housing market. So imagine what happens when you add a bunch of buyers to the market and the inventory for homes doesn't really change. That means that when you put that offer in on that home, you're probably going to have maybe 4 or 5 times the amount of offers that you did before, which makes buying a home very difficult during this time. You don't really have the choice to pick or sleep on things. You're going to have to know exactly what you want and put your offer in as soon as possible, because there's going to be 5 other offers similar to yours. And also, when there's a ton of offers out there, that means that homes are selling much quicker. I've seen some homes sell in one day, and some of them within the hour of actually being listed. That is what happens when you have a ton of buyers and low interest rates. So if you're new to buying houses, this may be overwhelming. You may think nothing is fair because you're not just going up against new home buyers, you're going up against investors, second home buyers, people who are upgrading their homes. They already know exactly what they're doing. And so if you're new to home buying, this is going to be a very frustrating process. Now, the next thing to consider when there's a lot of buyers out there is eventually that inventory is not going to keep up with the demand. And so the inventory is going to keep going down and down and down to the point where there is no inventory left. And so it makes it really hard for you to find a home, and even a home that you're willing to buy. And so people just end up buying anything for the fear of running out of homes, and that ultimately drives the price up. In this scenario, it becomes a seller's market. You won't hear anybody call this a buyer's market because it's not a buyer's market. There aren't enough homes to sell. So that drives up prices in real estate. And so if you're looking for a house maybe 2 years ago when interest rates were 4 or 5%, that house was probably cheaper than it is today. And the reason for that is similar to earlier. When people are putting offers in, if they only see 1 or 2 offers, most likely they're not going to outbid each other, and they're just going to pay the fair market value. But if there's 5 offers or 10 offers or sometimes even 20 offers on the same property, everybody's going to start outbidding each other and bidding over the market value, which ultimately drives up the price of real estate. I mean, in some markets, this can be $10,000, $20,000 over the asking price. In markets like the Bay Area, it could be $100,000 or $200,000. It really can get that crazy when interest rates are low. And the reason why I say this is a seller's market is because even myself as a real estate investment owner is even considering selling my property, because I know that right now the real estate market is at its highest or maybe close to its highest, and I may consider just taking a profit on my property. Consider this, my property that I bought for $194,000 has appreciated back to the pre-recession price. The pre-recession price back in 2006 when this home was built was $322,000. Now I don't know the exact value, but Zillow prices this house at $310,000. And Zillow historically has been $10,000 to $20,000 lower than what it actually is worth. And so you can see my house is now appreciated back to that value. And so that tells me that everything has gone way back up, and also it's about 50 or 60% gain from what I bought it for. And so even I am considering selling this. And considering what I'm seeing, most likely I will get more than $320,000 for this property, even though I know in the bottom of my heart that it is not worth $320,000. But this is what people are paying, and the reason why they're paying this is the interest rates are so low and the inventory is so low. Now, so far everything may have sounded really negative, but let me talk about the third reason, and this is something you should consider as well. And that is, if you can afford the home and it's worth it to you, you should just buy the home. Because even if you try to wait it out, most likely you're not going to save that much money. It really depends on your situation, so hear me out. So the lower interest rates can be a blessing for a lot of you. If you guys are kind of on that border of not being able to afford a home because the interest rates are too high, this is a good time to buy a home. because you're not going to save that much money if you try to wait. If you're sitting on a lot of cash, you have enough for a down payment, the price looks right, and you can afford the home, then just go for it. Don't worry about what I said earlier. Just ignore all of that. I know it's going to be frustrating, but if you found the perfect home and you've been looking for a home and you need a home, then this is a good time to just buy it. You're never going to find interest rates this low again, and if this is the only way you can buy a home, then just do it. Because even if you try to wait for the home prices to drop, it just means that the interest rates are going to go back up. Remember, interest rates have to go back up or people have to lose their jobs. And so even if that happens, let's say your home price goes down to $250,000, but interest rates go back up to 5%. Well, you're probably going to end up paying the same amount in the long run. Let's take that $300,000 house as an example. Let's say the interest rates go back up to 5%, but the housing prices go back down to $250,000 for that same house. You're probably thinking you got a good deal, and in most cases it is a good deal because it dropped $50,000. If you actually look at the math and do all the numbers, you'll actually see that you don't actually save that much. That $250,000 loan at 5%, that home will cost you $483,139 over the life of the loan. That same $300,000 loan with historic low interest rates of 3% is going to cost you $455,332. So you can see here, even though the homes went down $50,000, if you end up just paying that 30-year mortgage, you're going to end up paying about $30,000 more over the life of the loan. And so is it worth it to wait? Probably not. If you're in that situation where you can now afford a home because interest rates are at an all-time low, but you couldn't before when they were at 4 or 5%, well, it makes sense for you to still buy a home. Because if you looked at the numbers earlier, you're actually going to save about $30,000 by buying it at the low interest rate. But there is one last thing to point out that I want you to know and consider. And that is the home purchase price can never change. And so in my opinion, it is always better to buy a cheap home at a high interest rate than to buy an expensive home at a low interest rate, which is the time that we're in now. Now you're probably wondering why, and the reason why I say this is because the only thing in the equation that you can never change is the purchase price. And so if you bought that home for $300,000, it is always going to be $300,000. And vice versa, if you bought that house for $250,000, it is always going to be $250,000. And the reason why I say this is because all of your loan terms can always change. Interest rates can still go down in the future, and earlier I mentioned life of the loan, that's 30 years. Those numbers were 30-year calculations, and it can always change midway. You can always pay it down faster, you can always get a new job, and so ultimately it's better to have a $250,000 mortgage because you can always pay it down quicker or even refinance it into a lower interest rate loan. On the $300,000 example, that would be much harder because you're already at 3%. The interest rates would have to go below that to 2% or 1%, which we've never seen ever. And so in my opinion, it is much better to buy a home with higher interest rates with lower purchase price than it is to buy that same home for an inflated price at low interest rates. And also it's going to be much more relaxing when interest rates are a little bit higher because there's going to be a lot less buyers, there's going to be a lot less competition. You'll actually be able to sleep on it and actually pick the house that you want. There'll actually be more homes available for sale, and so it's just a little bit better situation. So for me, I don't prefer buying homes during this time. I have a lot of cash available, and so I have a big down payment that I can put down. And so low interest rates doesn't really benefit me very much. It just means that there's a whole bunch of other people that I have to deal with and compete with, and most likely I'm going to be overpaying on that property. I'm looking for investments that are going to appreciate, and at the prices these homes are selling for, I don't feel like they're going to go up that much more or that significantly for me to get a return on my money. The best scenario for me is to buy homes when interest rates are really high, that way home prices are low, and then down the road at some point refinance it to a lower interest rate so that way you get the best of both worlds. You get a low purchase price and you get a low interest rate. That's what I had on my rental, and that's what I have on my current house as well. And one other thing to consider is that interest that you're paying on this mortgage is all a tax write-off. So even though it's at 5%, in reality, it may actually only be 4% because your effective tax rate may be so high that all of that mortgage interest that you're going to deduct is actually going to save you money on your income taxes. And so for me, even if interest rates were at 5%, that's still going to be a tax write-off for me, and so it's still going to help me in some form or fashion, and so I'd rather have that scenario. Also, when mortgage interest rates are higher, that means that the savings rates are higher. Right now they're paying a pitiful 1%. Typically they're in the 2 to 2.4%, and so you can see even there I'm losing about 1% because the interest rates are at an all-time low. Just some things to consider. Well guys, hopefully you found this video helpful. Again, I'm not your real estate agent or your financial advisor. This is just free information for you to consider when buying a home during this time. If you know anybody buying a home, make sure you share this video with them. It may give them a new perspective, or it may change their mind or help them save some money. you guys like content like this or like to save money, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below. I post a new video every week. As always guys, have a nice day.